Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's first video. We're doing the January month-ahead forecast for today's first video. So we're going to have a look at the CFS V2 and Beijing Climate Centre models to see what they're showing for January 2020. And then I will give you the GasWeather's January forecast. We're going to begin by having a review of December's forecast, December 2019. At the end of the video, have a little sneak peek for February 2020. Coming up later on, we're going to have the weekend forecast, as well as on a Saturday. We're going to have your weekend look ahead, and of course, we will also have a week to 10-day video update on the homepage this afternoon as well. Let's start off then reviewing what happened in December. So the GasWeather's December forecast was for an unsettled month. We thought low pressure would be dominating through this December. We said that it's likely to be another unsettled month, and there could well be problems with more flooding. We thought it was going to be a rather cool month. A couple of quite potent cold snaps could be in there as well, alternating with very mild interludes too. So a very active month's weather with the jet stream lining up northwest to southeast on occasion. So this is what we actually came away with, though, for December 2019. So it was a milder than average month for all areas. Set against 81 to 2010, we see that the temperature anomaly comes out for Scotland. Highest, actually, for Scotland, really. Up there around 1.5 to 2.5 degrees above the 81 to 2010 average. For the rest of the UK, we're pretty much around half a degree to 1.5 degrees above average, so somewhere around a degree above the 81 to 2010 average in most parts of the country for December, and milder than that up across Scotland. So it was a mild December 2019. Rainfall wise, quite an interesting month. So we see that many southern and southeastern parts of the country, particularly southern England to East Anglia, had a substantially wetter for an average month. It was a wet month down in the south. It was also quite a wet month for southwestern parts of Scotland, but conversely, eastern Scotland and northeast England come away with a rather drier than average month. So regional variation, but I think we can say many southern and southeastern parts of the country and also southwestern Scotland, it was quite a wet month. There were further issues with localised flooding, not to the extent that we had it in November, but there were issues with localised flooding in places, and it was an unsettled month, especially the first half. We did highlight that the first half of December was likely to be wetter than the second half, and then we thought it would go drier later in the month, and particularly around Christmas up to New Year, it would probably become drier. But we thought it would probably be a little bit colder than it actually turned out to be. So I think overall the forecast was a mixed forecast, really. There were some good points in it. We did get the unsettled overall flavour of December correct. We correctly identified the first half to be more unsettled than the second half. It was just really the temperature that we pitched a little bit too high. It was a milder than average month than we anticipated. We didn't get those couple of potent cold snaps that we expected, although the first sort of 5 days were actually quite cold with fairly widespread frost. So overall it's mixed. There were elements of the December forecast that were quite good, other elements not quite as good. Right, let's go on to January then. So this is the CFS V2 700 millibar height anomaly for January. If you want a cold month, get behind the Sage Long. It doesn't get as bad as this, really. Low pressure is dominating up to the north. All of those blue, or all of that blue, across Greenland, Iceland, and through the northern latitudes. That is a very intense polar vortex that's churning away there over Greenland and driving in westerlies. We also have a large ridge of above average heights across much of central, southern and southwestern Europe, and we're bringing in long fetch southwesterly winds as well. So as I say, if you want a cold month, that's as bad as it gets, really. It doesn't get any worse than that. It's very Atlantic driven. It's mild. It's also, for western and northern parts of the country, quite unsettled. Southern and southeastern areas, though, probably quite a lot drier, close to that area of high pressure. It is rampant zonality. Temperature anomalies are exceptionally mild for January 2020 across most parts of Europe. We're pretty much going off the scale, really, for Northern Europe. So parts of Scandinavia here, and also around the Baltic Sea into the west of Russia, we're going to 4 degrees above average, which is as far as the scale will go. So off the scale mild for northern parts of Europe. Otherwise, other parts of northern Europe are around 3 to 4 degrees above average. Actually, where we are over in the west, I mean, we're in the red colours, so we're 1 to 2 degrees above average, but we're not as ridiculously mild as it is further north and northeast into northern and northeastern parts of Europe, which is looking extraordinarily mild, actually, on this forecast. So a substantially mild and average month, though. Pretty much nowhere in Europe cold and average, other than perhaps some Greek islands, and also maybe around parts of southern and eastern Turkey. Otherwise, it's just a sea of exceptionally mild temperatures during January, which of course is being caused by those long fetch southwesterlies going all the way off the chart. We also see from the so let's see what's gone wrong there. So that is also the temperature anomaly. So what we've got to do is click backwards and click backwards again, and we go to a precipitation anomaly. Sorry about this. And that's a precipitation anomaly for January 2020. So we see that much of Northern Europe is wetter than average, above average rainfall. Scandinavia, most parts of the UK, particularly northern and western areas, come away with a wetter than average month as well. Conversely, though, many central and southern parts of Europe are drier than average. So from France and Germany southwards, it's a very dry scene, really, and that, of course, being caused by that strong ridge of high pressure sitting across many central and also southern parts of Europe, with low pressure out to the northwest along with the jet stream. So lots of low pressure up here, and all of the high pressure is through there. So it means that the southern and eastern parts of the country, precipitation is around average for this January. For Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales and South West England, we could get another wetter than average month. That's how the CFS-V2 is looking. Beijing Climate Centre looks like this. And this is the 500 millibar height anomaly from the Beijing Climate Centre from the 6th of January to the beginning of February. And it's very similar, really, to what CFS is showing. Lots of below average heights, lots of low pressure to the north and northwest. Above average heights ridging in from the Azores into central and southern parts of Europe. That leaves us in this long fetch southwesterly wind. So again, it looks very zonal, very Atlantic driven. Wettest conditions will be in the northwest, driest conditions will be in the south and east. It will be mild, very mild, or exceptionally mild for all areas. Temperature anomalies with the Beijing Climate Centre are substantially above average. We're talking about 2 degrees perhaps above average in most parts of the UK. Northern and Central Europe are actually warmer than that, sort of 4 degrees above average. So again, in line between the two models for a very, very mild month indeed. Even you would say a warm month to average for northern parts of Europe. Precipitation-wise, we go for a rather wetter than average month with the Beijing Climate Centre through many parts of the UK and Ireland, just a little bit drier down across this southern and southeastern corner. Central Europe under that ridge of high pressure, and southern Europe too look drier than average. So we have a very clear-cut signal from both the CFS and the Beijing Climate Centre for a zonal January, Atlantic-driven low pressure around Iceland and Greenland, driven by the polar vortex, and high pressure then ridging through much of central, southern and southwestern Europe, bringing up those long thick southwesterlies. And given the model outputs in at the moment, I see no reason to sort of deviate from that prediction. So BegadsWeathers.com January 2020 forecast is for a Atlantic driven month. So therefore a zonal month and a milder than average month. I think temperature anomalies are likely to be around 1 degree to 2 degrees above average, so could be a very mild month. I wouldn't totally rule out the chance of a record-breakingly mild month, that we might see the January 1916 CET record beaten. Wouldn't totally rule that out, but I wouldn't expect it. So it's a possibility, but I wouldn't expect that to happen. I think we probably come away with our mildest January for around 11, 12 years, something like that. So a very mild January coming up, 1 to 2 degrees above average, and also precipitation quite interesting. So for southern and southeast parts of the country, probably relatively dry down there. There will be rain at times, but I think the south and southeast may get their first dry of an average month for a little while. But in the northwest, it could be a very wet month. Western parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England could have an exceptionally wet month. Could be that kind of month where the rain is very much stuck in the northwest, but down in the southeast might actually be relatively dry. There's a bit of a question mark about the last week of January. It may start getting a little bit colder then if the high pressure ridges far enough north, but I'm a bit dubious about that. I think any high pressure ridging north is going to struggle against the Atlantic and the jet stream this month. So if we do see high pressure attempting to push up to Scandinavia, I think very quickly that'll be flattened off by the jet stream and the low pressure just continuing to sort of be pushed in, driven in by the polar vortex and by the low pressures around Greenland, Iceland, and also the Atlantic side of Canada. So it's that kind of month that we get a lot in the winter in northern and western Europe, especially in recent years. So it's a continuation of mild Atlantic-driven and zonal weather. Just the outside chance that we could get something quite a lot colder in the last week of January, but I wouldn't expect that without something like a sudden stratospheric warming to sort of shake things up. I think any high pressure ridging north is really going to struggle. Could turn anticyclonic in the second half of the month. If that happens, then it will be a colder month because we'll start generating frost and fog. It will be a cold month than the forecast, I should say. Probably still coming out close to average or a bit above, but not quite the 1 to 2 degrees above average if we sort of ridge a high pressure into the UK, which is a possibility. If high pressure wants to ridge north in the last week of January but gets flattened off, it could finish up somewhere like over the top of the UK. If that was to happen, then we would start generating frost and fog, but it wouldn't be Arctic or Siberian cold. Right, so that's for January forecast. Let's just have a quick sneak peek at February. And again, look away now, cold lovers, if you want a cold end to this winter, because again, this is as bad as it gets. The CFS is still going for this idea of high pressure covering most parts of central southern Europe. The low pressure with the polar vortex is still there. The polar vortex of doom is still there across Greenland and Iceland, and we still drag in those long, thick southwesterly winds with the air originating the tropical Atlantic and being pumped northward. So that will be an exceptionally mild end to what could turn out to be an exceptionally mild winter. But of course, it's early days on that. December was only a degree or so above average. It wasn't an exceptionally mild December. Does look as though January could be a very mild month, I have to say, particularly the first half of it. But it may get a little bit cooler in the second half, and then, of course, it's down to February as to where this winter ranks as an all-time warm winter, I suppose. Right, so that's it. That's for January forecast. It's not good news if you want a cold and wintry month, but as ever with any forecast over 5 to 7 days, it comes with a big health warning. It's just a bit of fun. Really, don't take anything, any forecast beyond sort of 5 to 7 days too seriously or too literally. It's just an idea of what may happen through January. But of course, the weather always finds ways to catch us out and surprise us. Coming up later on today, we're going to have a weekend forecast that will contain a lot of mild weather within it, I'm quite sure. And then a week's 10-day video update will be placed on the homepage this afternoon. That's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.